Hello. Good. Welcome everybody. Just a few words from me by way of an introduction. Then I'm going to hand over to Tim. Tim's going to say a few words, and then Nathan will get going with the questions. First of all, from the stadium company, a fire announcement. They have no planned fire alarms tests. So if you hear an alarm, it's back down to the main entrance, the revolving doors, and across to where the bus stop is. The little gap is to where the bus stop is at Grenoble Road as a meeting point for the fire safety. So bear that in mind. A few thank yous to start with. First of all, to Michael Doyle and his stadium team, who provided Oxfox and OUSP free of charge this facility and the Wi-Fi. So thank you very much to them. Also, big thanks to Alex from CVP Oxford, who is in charge of all this technical kit, keeping us on the straight and narrow, and also doing it at cost. So thank you very much to them. Big thank you to Nathan as well, who will be asking the questions. He's working independently of BBC and the club. He's actually just coming to help us out. So thank you, Nathan. That's much appreciated. Also, a big thanks to Tim, Grant, and all the other guys that are here for giving us their time and allowing us to grill them, which I'm sure we will. Finally, a big thank you to all of you that have come here. A club is only as good as its supporters, and ours are engaged and active, and that will stand us in good stead going forward. One last point, we are running a streaming service, so people that aren't here can watch via YouTube, I believe. 66 people already. Please watch your language. I know I don't need to say that, but because we're streaming out, we need to be very careful of that. If you're watching at home, please watch the comments as well, because it's going out publicly. So help us stay on the right side of things. So finally, all that's left for me is to say thank you again. Perhaps I could say, if there's any younger members sitting and you see an older person who might like to sit, that might be nice. Other than that, I will pass over to Tim, and then we'll get to Nathan to ask the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me. I think I generally have a loud enough voice anyway, but without miking up, it's even worse now. So it's great to see everybody here tonight. And on behalf of the club, I would like to say actually a thank you to everybody for coming this evening. Busy lives, time spent to come and support the club means an awful lot to us. So a huge thank you for taking the time out of your diaries, let alone ours. That's what we get paid to do this. You don't, so thank you. It's really appreciated. I don't need to tell anyone in this room about the importance that football plays in towns, cities, communities and villages around the country. In April 2021, football came to a crossroads. Many years of building resentment at how football clubs have become distant and disconnected from their fans spilled over after the European Super League announcement. But some good did come out of it. We now have a fan-led review. We have a government white paper and the potential for an independent football regulator to ensure that the relationship between football and its fans is forever cemented. And rightly, you as fans, supporters, expect us to protect your clubs. And I can assure you, we are doing just that. The way we get there might mean some bumps along the way, some criticism from both sides. But we're here for one reason and one reason only, because we all want the very best for Oxford United Football Club for now and for generations to come. As owners, as the board, as senior management team up here with me today, we want Oxford United to find its deserved place in the Championship of English football and to make sure we stay there. For that, we need to increase our fan base. We need to move to a new stadium and fill it. And unashamedly, we need to grow the top line. Already, our owners invest some £5 million a year of their own money into our club. That is a huge amount of money to spend. And therefore, we have an obligation to find new fans, new markets, and new revenue streams. That's what we have to do for now. But we also need to make sure that we're absolutely ready to move into our 16,000-seater stadium. We've invested in the senior management team of the club, and they're here with me today. They've got experience from all aspects of football over many years, because that's what we need to do to make sure we're not only ready to be promoted, but we're able to stay there. We've made massive progress. We've increased our revenues this year alone, like for like, by around £300,000. We've achieved record retail sales. We've revolutionised our social media and our content. But so what? That's great for the new fans. What about you guys? The fans who've been here for years and years and years, and I get that. Our comms needs to change dramatically. And it needed to change. We did a lot, we still do a lot, but frankly, it wasn't very good. And it needed to be a lot better, more engaging, more structured. But we should have done more. And sometimes you have to root and branch review what you do. But now is the point that we start to do more. We've recently launched our fan engagement plan, which within all of that cements our relationship with Oxfox and OUSP. But more than that, we've looked at best practice in English football and are looking at the possibility to launch a fan advisory board to give real formality to our relationship and make sure that we are all held to account for this. And we want your feedback on this. This is a two-way process. And this evening is our opportunity to start that process. Am I happy with where the club is right now? No, because I never will be happy. You'll never hear me say that one particular season or another season is the best season Oxford United have ever had, because the best years for this club are yet to come. My goal is the same, to make this year better than last year, to make next year better than this year, and so on. And as long as you have this senior management team in place, we will never be satisfied, because we always know we can and will do better. You have our word on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Before we start, we'd like to just introduce your colleagues as well. There is some perhaps faces people recognise, perhaps not necessarily names. Do you want to take us through who's taking questions this evening?
Well, I've got to my far right, not necessarily politically, but geographically, I've got Jonathan Clark, who's our development director. And then on the centre right, I have Adam Benson, who's our Chief Commercial and Marketing Officer. And to my immediate right, Grant Ferguson, who you all should know as our club chairman. And to my left is Jim Goddard, one of our more recent appointments, who is our head of safety and operations. I think also from the club here, we have Stevie Kinnebrew, who's our academy head. We've got Carlos Power, who is our new head of finance, if he's around. And I can see Lee Barton and Luke Dick from our commercial and marketing team somewhere in the background, along with Claire Theobald, our chief of staff. So again, it's great to get, and I think Michelle Walton is knocking around here somewhere as well. And Anne Harris. Sorry, anyway, I'll name you all. But thank you for your support from the club as well. So it's great to see everybody here. And so there we go.
Well, not just a big turnout here, but also questions have been sent in to Oxfox and to the supporters panel. And a lot have been about the stadium, as I'm sure you can imagine. There'll be questions from the floor as well about that. We're going to try and put two or three of these questions together from Adam, James and Phil. They're all the same basic questions, but to phrase it like this: is there a budget for the stadium? We've heard figures of 80 million to 200 million. What figure does the club base its calculations on, is the first question.
Yeah, there's definitely a budget. No one would be talking to us if we didn't have a serious budget. It's not a fixed budget. The first design phase is just frozen as we submitted the planning application. But the costs that we're looking at range anywhere between 130 and 150 million pounds.
And then the next question really on that subject is, how did the club intend to raise the finance for the stadium? How much of that debt will sit with the club going forward? And can you outline how the owners will recover the costs on the project?
The short answer is we don't fully know, because we've only got to the point where we're at. We're now at a point where we're putting together an investment paper, and we will take that out and raise money. The shareholders are committed to funding a very significant portion of that. So it's the same as any large-scale investment project. We'll end up with a mix, an appropriate mix of debt, short-term debt, longer-term debt, shareholders' equity. There are some grants that will undoubtedly be available. We will sell the naming rights to the stadium, and we have a bunch of advisors around the world looking in different markets, and then we create what we call the funding stack, and it will all eventually add up to the 100 and whatever that budget turns out to be. In terms of a legal structure that sits in, I think that was the other part of your question. Again, it's a process, so we need to come up with what that funding stack looks like, and then depending on that, there may be requirements of shareholders, there may be requirements of lenders as to what that legal structure looks like, as to whether the stadium's in one company and the club operations are in another company. It may be a subsidiary company, it may be a sister company. That will sort of depend on a bunch of bankers and lawyers figuring out what is the most optimum structure. But in any of the conversations, it is 100% clear that the right to use that stadium will be 100% with the football club, 365 days a week. And all of the economic benefits of that stadium will accrue to the football club. The legal niceties will take care of themselves, but the value of the stadium belongs to the club.
There's just one thing I want to clarify, and it's a conversation that actually Paul and I had a few weeks ago, which is that, you know, in addition to what Grant is saying about the debt equity split, the way we raise the funds, I think it's very important to clarify that funders do not lend unsustainable debt. There is a concept that we know of and that we have that I've got a lot of experience with, which is debt capacity. We would not get debt to cover the entire cost of the stadium because that would be deemed absolutely unsustainable. What that percentage is, I can't tell you, but what I can say is that there is under no circumstances a situation where the club would be borrowing unsustainably because lenders simply do not allow that. It's just a fact of the markets.
So will there be any rent for the football club to play in that stadium? And is there any guarantee that going forward, should the owners sell the club, that there's a contract in place that protects Oxford United in the future?
So the legal arrangements will be such that there is an inextricable link. One, the land itself can only be used for a stadium. So no matter who owns it, whether it's this lot of owners or another lot of owners, it's very clear that for 200 years, whatever the lease turns out to be, it can only ever be used as a football stadium, full stop. So the idea of asset stripping and building a commercial development or housing development doesn't exist. That's one thing. The second part is the only purpose, if the stadium ends up in a separate company, the only reason to have it there would be to service debt. And then once the debt has been paid, all the economic benefit accrues back to the football club.
That sort of wraps up the three that we put together. So any questions from the floor, stadium-wise? It isn't clear at this point. We have a lot to get through tonight, but the stadium is obviously the big thing. If you've got any comments stadium-wise, we'll take those now. Gentleman with a hand up there. Paul will bring the mic to you. I will say, by the way, while we get the mic there, a lot of the emails also praise the work that's been done so far on the stadium project, and a lot of thank yous coming in as well. We should make that clear, as well as asking about the debt and the finance.
Well, that's appreciated, because this guy in particular, but this whole team have done an inordinate amount of work. You wouldn't believe what's gone into it. And unfortunately, we're only just starting. But the amount of work that has gone in so far is incredible.
So I'd echo those thank yous, and also to Niall McWilliams, who's not here, I know, who's done a lot to do with that. You talked about various different funding models and funding sources. Obviously, you don't know how much you will raise from that. In the worst case scenario, are the shareholders and the board fully committed to the entire stadium project, even if they have to pay for it without some of these other funding sources?
Well, I can't use the word committed because I haven't got a piece of paper that says they are committed. What we obviously do is put up a funding proposal to them like any other business would do, and the amount of the cost of that project is very clear to them, And that's the basis on which we have been greenlit to move ahead. Interestingly, this notion keeps coming up that somehow there's an asset play or a land play or a property play as part of that. All of the investment proposals and theses that we've put up to the shareholders is for one unified approach to a football club and a stadium. There is no investment scenario where we're investing in a stadium here and we're investing in a football club here. The returns that we're presenting to them that they can make are for the combined stadium and football club.
Paul, perhaps you should take this question, one that came in from Adam about the stadium, that says, will Oxfox apply for an asset of community value against the new stadium?
That's quite easy. Yes, we will. It's something that was done previous to us at this stadium, and it's something we'll look at the next.
Any club view on that at all? Is that acceptable? Are you happy with that?
I absolutely cannot see why not. I mean, the reality is if you look at the recent white paper, the protection of football club heritage, the inextricable link between the club and the stadium and the protection of that and the fans and the supporters is embedded in everything that we're doing with regards to this stadium. So absolutely, yes.
And it's in the land deal as well. It's not just the stadium structure and finance itself, it's in the land deal as well, and the restrictive covenants that get put into that lease agreement.
Any more questions from the floor? We've got a hand up over there. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, the structure that you've outlined is obviously an OpCo-PropCo structure. Will there be any safeguards, future safeguards, to keep the OpCo and PropCo linked? Or is it potentially possible to sell either the operating or the property company off separately at some point in the future in terms of its legal structure?
I mean, all I was giving you is possibilities. Quite honestly, we have not got to that. It really will depend on what the funding stack looks like, and then the legal structure will follow the funding stack. You're right, that would be a traditional type OpCo, and they would be bound at the hips by the contractual agreements anyway, because there will always be the agreement for the club to use the stadium. So if anyone was to buy the stadium, hypothetically in the future, they would still be bound by the right of the club to use that stadium. So they'd be buying it as sight is seen.
Yes, the reason behind my question is I'm familiar with that type of structure, and where the OpCo becomes attractive to potential investors, and the OpCo is sold for its rent and then ends up in different hands, and that's something I think is something to be wary of in that structure.
I think the one thing I would say to that actually is that in general speaking, given that the OpCo would be a football club, there are very, very few football clubs that would be on their own attractive to investors to hive off separately from the PropCo. So, and again, I think what, as Grant mentioned, what we would have is a very strong, and however it's structured, and as I say, there's no determination on that yet, but however that is structured, there would be this inextricable link between this is embedded in everything that we're doing. And again, frankly, it's something that we would actually highly unlikely get any approval from the Football League to do if there were separations and potential for separation between the football and the stadium. The whole purpose of what we're doing is to avoid the situation that we find ourselves in now.
A few questions regarding public transport at the new stadium as well. And I think it's Phil who asks, it can be difficult for many fans to get there. He asked specifically about the Oxford Parkway railway station park and ride. Can we park there? But I guess more generally, what sort of plans are in place in terms of transportation for the stadium?
John?
Yep. Yes, obviously we've submitted our planning application, which has been validated, so you can see a lot of that information online. We're putting together a substantial sustainable transport strategy, which ensures that fans can get to and from the stadium through sustainable means. Oxford Parkway is one of the best hubs. We're currently looking at all professional football stadia across the UK, and we're about to finish that analysis, but it looks like we will go from a stadium which has a station probably further away than most to literally a stadium that has, if not the first, then joint second closest to a transport mode hub, just as Oxford Parkway. So there's obviously fantastic links there for trains, buses. We've got a fantastic working relationship with Oxford Bus Company, Stagecoach, Chiltern, Network Rail, East West, and we're working with all these groups to form this transport strategy, which is being worked on as we speak, and along with Oxford County Council Highways Authority as well.
Not only Oxford Parkway, John, the other park
yeah.
and ride locations as well, with buses into the stadium.
Absolutely. So you'll be to drive to the park and rides that are around Oxford, depending on where your postcode is when you buy your ticket. That will send you to your closest one, and then you can bus into the stadium itself as well.
Lady behind first, I think. Sorry, lady behind you first. I beg your pardon, and then gentleman in front. Thank you.
Hello. There you go. I was just wondering how, so at the moment, parking at Kassam is free for match days. I know that's changing on the 14th, but is there any way that we can not only make it environmentally sustainable, but potentially financially sustainable, like tying it in with season ticket sales, for example, getting a bus pass to use?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know if you can tell from the accent, but I'm from Newcastle, and they have a fantastic scheme over there called Magpie Movers, and it's combined with the transport providers, the council and the club, and they subsidise transport tickets, so you can get through, I think it's the whole of Tyne and Wear, basically, on metro, bus, etc., all day on match days, and we would love to do something similar. It's a little bit difficult here because you've got it's a bit more piecemeal in how it's operated between Oxford and the north, etc., but we are working on that, and we would like to deliver that as part of our offer for our season tickets.
Gentleman in the front row, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Tim. My misheard you, I don't know. You said a minute ago about paying the debts off and then the economy going into Oxford United. What's the time frame on that, please?
The time frame on paying off the debts. So this depends on the funding stack, as Grant has mentioned. Now, let you into a little secret that a lot of this time the debts will just get rolled over. And what we will do is, in the initial period, we'll probably have a mixture of short-term and long-term debt at varying levels of interest. And at each point, some of that debt stack matures, you will make a decision as to whether you're going to repay the debt or roll over the debt. The ideal scenario is that you have a debt stack that actually matches the overall expected life of the stadium, which could be, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. But what you can do is at certain points, depending on promotion, depending on any potential windfalls, you can actually then choose to repay some of that debt stack. So the overall point would be that over time you reduce the debt on a relatively small basis to make sure that you protect the cash flows of the club, to make sure that what we're not doing is paying basically all of the benefit that we get in both capital and interest repayments. So it's not quite like an interest-only mortgage, but we could times when you have breaks in that overall funding stack.
Any more stadium-based? Yeah, gentleman, third row back, and then the man in the front row after that, please.
Hiya. I've got a question about safe standing at the new stadium. So at the moment, you've shown in your plans that the safe standing is going to be in the north stand. So has it been considered potentially having it behind both goals so that you've got home fans right next to the away fans? I'm just conscious because the area where you've currently shown to put the away fans is where the roof is lowest and the stand is quite close to the roof there. Whereas by contrast, where the home fans, you've got the
Hotel and
the hotel, and the roof is very high and the stand is lower. So I'm just conscious about the atmosphere in terms of boosting it for the home support rather than amplifying it for the away fans and having the home fans muffled in some way. I mean, this is probably more for the designers of the stadium, but yeah.
The acousticians, yeah, I know what you mean. So we've got 4,300 safe standing, and at the moment it's all on the north stand. That is closest to the plaza, closest to the facilities, closest to the areas where the hospitality is and the entrance and the main GAs, so it provides that sort of hub for home support. You can be outside, come inside. The one about the roof is interesting. Yes, the roof is lower on the away fan end, but it actually points up. so the noise actually goes up and out. The roof is higher on the home end, and this is, I'm not a technical expert, so please, the roof is higher on the other end, but it actually points down. So the fan noise from the home side all points down and into the pitch, whereas the fan noise from the away section actually goes up and out a bit more than it would. So yeah, we need you to make the noise, but what I'm being told is the designs that we're putting in place now amplify the home noise and actually dissipate the away noise.
Materials in the roof,
Yeah.
hold in all the sound.
There are buffers and things we can do, but again, I'd rather not be the club that put buffers in the away fans. I'd rather be the club that...
If I could come in on that one as well.
Yeah.
Just something to be aware of for safe standing. The reason it's in a corner is quite specific. With the safe standing locations, by very nature of people standing, it reduces the view line. So the safe standings, you look anywhere around Europe, and including our stadium we're going to put in place, has to be a corner. If you put the safe standing area directly behind the goal, then the people in the corners can't see the pitch. So if you look all around Europe, all the safe standing areas, you either go just into a corner or the entirety of an end, including both corners. There's a certain viewpoint, once you get to the corner of the pitch, that you can't do safe standing unless you're doing 100% across that end of the pitch. Now, looking round this audience, unless you're doing 100% across that end of the pitch. Now, looking round this audience, not everybody will want to be safe standing for its entirety. And as a result, you have to cater for that demographic which wishes to safe stand and have that entertainment, whilst you also have to cater for that demographic which wishes to sit and enjoy the moment and stand when there's a moment of excitement, but for the majority of the time, be sat down. So when you have to bear those bits in mind, when you look at the stadium, just bear in mind that the positioning of the safe standing is not being done to curtail it into an area, and usually those people who want to be in the safe standing are also those people who wish to be behind the goal. You have a choice, but you can't do both. And I just think that's something we can place. But it is valid regarding the noise that comes out, because generically around Europe, we've all seen that those safe standing areas are also the noisy zones. And that is very true, what you said about the roof, and it's a very valid observation, but we think we've got that bit catered.
And the away fans are also closest to the park and ride.
Something you said.
All right. The away fans are also closest to the park and ride and exit, so they can be marshalled out earlier if need be, if we play certain teams.
That's one in the front row on the far end, Paul, if you can scally across. We'll take a couple more stadium questions and we'll move into the other issues as well, because there's plenty more to get through away from the stadium. Yes, sir.
Thank you for everybody attending tonight. Just wondered what plan B is if it doesn't go ahead. Ground share or look for a new location. How the owners and the board think about what might happen if it's a no.
Like there's no doubt we're back to square one. Part of our submissions, and we will continue to say it, there are not a lot of options, which is why we have fought so hard for the triangle site. Is there a future for the football club? Of course there is. It's a historical institution, and there will be a future for it. What it is right now, I wouldn't even try and guess what that is. We just have to focus on getting that home on the triangle. In terms of a timeline, if we need to, we're thinking about that. If it's going to take us another 6 or 12 months, yeah, there are things we're going to do, we could do. Yeah, longer term's a tough one, but we'll find something. We just might have to get more creative as to where, and then you get to how far do you want to be away? We don't want to be far away at all, but
BMW and the JR and things like that. But
these guys have scoured Oxfordshire heads.
We did a significant site assessment. Obviously, we're developing in the Greenbelt. If there is any other long-term place to go, we would have found it. And look, if anyone else can find it, please give me a call. We're constantly looking at the risks of this. We're constantly analysing what are the options if things don't go our way. We've had meetings today and throughout while Grant's in town as well, just risk mitigating and making sure we want to protect the long-term future of this club. At this moment in time, there is no other long-term option to us. We had the same issues back in 2021. I was talking to Jacob earlier from the club, and he was saying, we were talking about the EFL about whether we'd be playing at Wickham or not. We have friends in the football community who can help us short term if we need to, but this is the only viable long-term option for the football club.
Oh, there is a question, yep.
The stadium planning, etc. Bridge, closed road, partial closure, barriers along the side, marshal crossings. What is it? Because some of us are going to be taking part in the consultation with Cherwell District Council, and on other elements of social media, we're going to be encountering certain non-friends of Stratfield Break and so-called green councillors and crossing swords with them. Give us some ammo, eh?
Thanks, Sarge. Keep the easy questions for us. I wondered when we crossed that bridge. Boom, boom. Sorry. I mean, all joking aside, and I know what you mean, we're passionate about this. The word ammunition, I'd stay clear of. I think a healthy debate, absolutely fine. If we're on socials and we've got certain people from certain groups saying certain things, be respectful. We're going to have people who don't want this to happen for various reasons. It's our job to try and persuade them otherwise. Some won't be persuaded. In constant dialogue with the councils, OCC as the landowner, CDC as the planning authority. We've got an incredible client team behind us the whole way, assessing everything we can possibly do. Our job is to provide a safe route from the stadium to the station and to your car, your bus, your train, your bike, however you're getting there. And that's what we're doing. And we're in constant dialogue with all those groups to make sure we get it right.
And I think I'd just like to add to what John says, actually, which is that, there's a lot that you probably don't see or hear from us, and that's because there are certain conversations and many conversations that we have that we simply can't talk about. And that is, things like, as you've mentioned, bridge or no bridge. What I can say is that as a group of people working really closely with Oxfordshire County Council and Cherwell District Council, we want to be, good citizens of that area. So we want to make sure that we do the right thing, but it's got to be done in the spirit of real consultation, real understanding of what we're trying to achieve. And the very fact, as John said, the key thing is to make sure that people could get in and out of that stadium as safely, as easy as possible, whether you are, able-bodied in a wheelchair, whether you've got sight difficulties, it doesn't actually matter. That is the key point for us, but that is a critical point that we're discussing at the moment.
I guess some follow-up questions will come, so I may as well tackle some of it as well. We are in a pre-application process for a bridge. We're having those discussions. We have designs, we have options, we're exploring those. We'll move on to a scoping exercise to see if we need to do a full environmental impact assessment, and then we'll go to a planning application, spring, early summer. And if you do want to support, write your letters of recommendation, letters of support, to the planning. You can go onto the website, you can go onto the planning portal, you should be able to click on it, you should be able to write in and support. At the moment, letters are flooding in for supporting and against the stadium. So, if you do support it, please make your voice heard and write in and tell them why it's so important to you and Oxfordshire and the football club.
Yeah, gentleman in the front row has been waiting, and we're going to have to move on from the stadium in just a second. Yes, gentleman, please. Thank you.
I've actually got a question, but just a quick aside on the rail standing. Portsmouth at the weekend, with their redeveloped stand, have rail standing right across the Milton Road, which they split into standing and seating as sales. But they also have the advantage that they can limit the away support and then sell the rest to their home supporters. What that resulted in is safe standing, rail standing right across the Milton Road, with home and away support together, which created quite an atmosphere. So that might be something to go back and revisit.
Good one.
We've actually factored that into the new stadium. So for away supporters, league is 10%. FA Cup goes up to 15%. We've left flexibility in the design that we can sell at 5%, 10% and 15% to away supporters. So if we don't get, you find a team that's not travelling in great numbers, but we can sell out, we've got the flexibility to do that.
Yeah, we've seen the blue lines on the plan, but this was more to do with
it one further now as
home and away support together. But my actual question was then, just thinking back to the last forum, which was back in December of 22, if anyone can remember that far back, that was for here. That's not happened, isn't going to happen for whatever reason. When I asked at the Pear Tree Roundabout exhibition about hospitality for the new stadium, the architects I spoke to didn't know much more than other than there would be general admission, premium admission, silver, gold boxes, directors. The question I have is, has there been any more thought given to that in terms of commercial viability and what the offer may be? And will it result in a them and us situation? Or will there be flexibility enough to offer multiple packages?
What do you mean by them and us?
As we stand now, we have the director's box and the rest of the stadium. We have the premium seating, of which I sit in. Previously, I was an 1893 club member. The supporters panel, to represent those people I felt were being sidelined at the time. There were a number of elderly, less able people who really did need that respite in the warm, pre-match and at half-time. Losing that meant that we lost some season ticket holders. We're not talking about 5 or 10 year, we're talking 50 and 60 year. I spoke to a gentleman who used to go to the Manor sitting on the crossbar of his dad's bike. Some 65 years later, he was coming here, but as he said to me, I'm not sure I can do it anymore because it's just too uncomfortable. So that option was taken away. I would like to know that there will be an affordable option for that type of person. For myself as well. I'm in my 68th year now. I don't stand for an entire game. But I would appreciate an affordable option to be able to say, at half-time I can get a cup of tea and a biscuit. But I would appreciate an affordable option to be able to say, at half-time I can get a cup of tea and a biscuit.
I'll answer some of that. In terms of packages, can I tell you exactly what they'll be? Not at this current time. And the reason being is that we're not sure what league we're going to be in. We're not sure what the demand will be based on that league, etc. I think to address your concerns, though, because they're concerns that we've expressed to the design team, the branding team, etc. First and foremost, the concourses themselves, we've basically told them we don't want what is just considered standard. They have to deliver a very, very good experience. So regardless of whether you're in the stadium as a, let's call it GA ticket, match day ticket, all the way up to buying the boardroom, you can come and enjoy that experience regardless. So make sure the catering facilities are good, make sure the lighting's good, make sure it's warm in there, make sure there's places where you can potentially rest to, rest your drink, etc. Make sure that the decor's right. So we are not designing your standard concourse, and that will make sure that we can cater to everyone. The visitor experience, and we've talked about this extensively with the research we're doing and the designs, visitor experience has to be everything. And that means it doesn't matter who you are, what your budget is, you can come to this new stadium and you can have a good experience. That is fundamental to everything we're doing. I mean, it sounds sad, but we've been doing it today. We've been talking about the spec of taps that go into the toilets today. The provision of toilets, heating systems, how much power is going to go onto those concourses. We are engineering this to make sure that your experience will be good, right from the get-go, and you don't have to just pay a huge sum of money to get that great experience. Can I tell you every package at the moment? No, but there will be a delivery and there will be an experience for every single person that comes to that stadium. And that has been drummed into the whole team, the client team, the architects, the designers, the M&E team, the branding strategy team, and that's what we're going to deliver.
But what you're also touching on here is something that is also an absolutely critical part of the new stadium, which is something we're already engaging at the absolute highest level. In fact, John and I have had several meetings already with James Tanigray-Thompson with respect to accessibility in the stadium. That is absolutely at the top of the agenda. It doesn't matter, you know, who you are, you will be able to access our stadium, and it will be absolutely world-class in terms of accessibility. We are engaging at the absolute highest level to ensure that is top of our agenda. I can absolutely assure you of that.
That's a great question. Thank you very much for that.
It's not just the football.
Absolutely. It's the experience.
Absolutely. No, 100%.
I think that's a good place just to park the stadium for a second. If you've got a question, apologies. We've only got 45 minutes left or just after, and there's plenty more to get through. Particularly, I want to come to the C word, gentlemen, because that's been used a lot recently, communication. We've had James, who's contacted us, talking about the comment made about too much communication to the fans. What is the club's take right now on the communication?
Well, you know what, too much, too little, whether it's through a programme, whether it's through social media, one could argue that it's always too much or it's always never enough. And I think it depends on the person who's receiving the communication, the person who's delivering the communication. As I said right at the start, we've probably not got it right. And that's why we want to listen. That's why we want to try and understand what it is. Because, you know, look, when I look at, say, the kind of level of communication that we've done in terms of programme notes, you know, it's fair to say that what we sell maybe 600 programmes a game. So that only reaches 600 people. We've also got, say, 51,000 followers on our social media sites, so we have to ensure that we communicate properly there. So I think my point would be that I don't think in the past the communication has actually been particularly meaningful. And I say that from my own experience of maybe doing the 5-minute fans forums probably over a year ago when, you know, I listened to that and I even bored myself. So I think it's important that what we do is appropriate and meaningful communication, which is why we're looking at how we put best-in-class fan engagement strategies in place, which is why we're talking about the potential launch of a fan advisory board, which is why, you know, I only spoke to, well, Grant spoke to Jerome last week. We're launching also a monthly session with Jerome where either myself or Adam will do a half hour or an hour with Jerome once a month, which will effectively replace what we used to do, which was those weekly 5-minute fans forums. Having said that, as I said right at the start, we can always do it better. But the next point I want to make is that communication doesn't just mean talking to me and Grant. It means communication across the entire club. So one of the other things that we're going to be doing as well is actually having a full-time dedicated supporter liaison officer, which is something that, you know, Andy Taylor's done a job on this, and Andy Taylor's been our SLO recently, but he's got significant other responsibilities, as we all know. And so what we're going to do is actually create an entire dedicated role of an SLO. That's going to improve communication across every single level of the club. So this is not just about listening to Grant and myself kind of drone on from time to time or say actually very important things, and that is the key. When we've got something to say, we will say it. When you've got questions to ask, you come to us and we will respond. You know, I know for a fact that when Adam Benson gets an email, he responds personally to those emails. I know that. And so I think it's sometimes a little disingenuous to say that the communication's been bad, because it depends who you are. We do a lot, but it needs to be more meaningful. So that's...
To me, actually, it doesn't matter, Tim, whether it was good or bad. It was what it was. The point is, we were conscious of wanting to do better. And it's 6 months since I tasked these guys, let's go and find out what the best clubs do. A lot of people. And so to put together what is now the supporters engagement